Okay, so Sunday, I had the opportunity to talk about my laziness and my apathy in regards to participating in the ministry and how God worked on me to where not only am I employed to do the things that I didn't want to do, I actually enjoy it and see a lot of purpose and vision in it and all that kind of thing. So my question to you, lead pastor Matt Sturdevant, what is your story on participating in the ministry? Because you grew up in church too, but when this what you've told us before, when you first saw the hard attitudes being enacted, it was in college at a church start that was meeting in a community center, didn't look like a church and all that kind of stuff. So you were seeing
Didn't
it.
smell like a church either.
Smell like a community center?
A senior community.
Ooh, delicious. How did you start working on this as a value for you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think one of the things is I think I was just invited to start.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there was a need and somebody said, hey, could you? And then, sure. And so, you know, I early on in serving, you don't know what you're going to enjoy. You don't know maybe even what you're good at.
Mm-hmm.
So like in a mobile church, chair moving, there's lots.
There's a lot of chair movement.
So a lot of times it's just, we gotta move these chairs. And that was probably the first,
and you were like,
first service opportunity.
And that was like every week. You're setting up church every week.
Every week, yeah. And it started early on. I think it could have even been the very first Sunday I was there. I didn't help set up that day, but church was over, people were hanging out, and then now it's time to move the chairs around so that they can do senior center stuff starting on Monday morning. I like tech stuff. Mm-hmm. And so I served in what was the equivalent to the booth. Okay. But it was more like this little rolling cart with a little mixer, kind of like what you're using for this.
Yeah, man.
And you know, so I got to do some of that. But then I think where I really started to get excited about serving was when I got asked to help with some special projects. And maybe at first glance, they didn't seem like, oh, that's not ministry. You know, again, what is ministry? What is serving? Is we're trying to move the mission forward together. So our pastor at the time, he was very big on vision, very low on administration, and I like organizing things that it made sense to me. I could do it. So I was studying marketing at the time, and I think I did a project that I got to do this project for my coursework. It's something that could help the church. It's a marketing research project. Perfect. And so I got to work a lot with our pastor and go through that. And then I could see, like, wow, okay, I'm using some skills and abilities that I have, something that's interesting to me. Because I think that's one of the big fears, too, when you start out is, they're going to ask me to do something I hate. Like, here's the thing, Brian, you and I, we know a fair amount of people in missions work. Mm-hmm. I think when you're growing up and you're a kid, like, what's the biggest fear if you really follow Jesus?
Oh, it's good. Yeah, absolutely. He's going to have you do the exact thing you hate to do.
Exactly.
And you're going to hate doing it the whole time.
Or he's going to send me to this far off place in the world that I'm going to hate.
Because God loves me. Yeah. He's going to do something that I'm just going to...
I know some missionaries who are in those far off places in the world, and guess what? They love it. They're right where God has them. Maybe difficult, but they're right where God has them. So for me, it was this true to real moment where I have these interests, gifts, abilities. I'm able to use them to help my pastor. I'm able to use them to help the church. I'm able to use them to help move things forward. And that was kind of like really a turning point for me. You know, I'm probably 20, 21 years old while this is happening. And I just get this, it's like this light bulb goes off of like, wow, God's made me a certain way, and he wants to use me not to be somebody else. Like, I don't have to be the one singing on stage, which there's a reason why I'm not the worship pastor. You've heard me say it before. I'll keep saying it. You don't want me to be the guy on stage singing. So I don't have to try to be that guy, but I can be who God has made me to be, and I can use what he's put together, still growing, learning, but I can use who God has made Matt to be, to serve him, to serve the body, to serve the bigger mission.
Yeah, I think when I was thinking about the message and reading the chapter in Pastor Harold's book, and even as I'm listening to you tell that story, I think, I was interviewing the folks on the Zoom call. It's all those things where people were experiencing the hard attitudes before they knew they were experiencing the hard attitudes, that often it was in the correcting or the clearing up where they became face to face with, oh, we're going to get real now, I see. But often they were already experiencing the hard attitudes. And it reminded me of really stupid commercial that used to be on when I was a kid I think it was for Palmolive laundry or dish soap, whatever. And it would be kind of like we're sitting here at a nail salon, and this one lady has her nails soaking, I guess, to make them soft so they can be sanded down or grinded, whatever people do with manicures. I've never had one. And they would start talking about Palmolive, like, oh, what is this great stuff? And go, you're already soaking in it. Like, what? Because it was supposed to be good for your hands, I think was the thing. But I think that's really true particularly for serving. So like I mentioned, there's a lot of chair stacking when I first started attending Hope. You were working or serving at Pierpoint, and there was a lot of chair stacking. There's Deck the Halls. There is any number of serving opportunities where I think you're already soaking in it. You've already experienced serving at some level. Mm-hmm. And, but I think we put a thing on it like, oh, it's this holy, hard, miserable thing to do. And often, I get to play with cameras and video editing and music and all this which is a lot of fun for me. That there is a lot of joy that comes out of serving. It's not gross and it's not drudgery. And I think, for me, the hardest place to serve still would be the nursery. I'm scared of kids. I'm not scared of my own kids. I'm scared of everybody else's kids.
I got a great nursery story.
I have one too. It's frightening. But God doesn't want me serving there. I think I am so grateful for all of the people that feel like that's where they can put in their good strokes for the kingdom, is serving in the nursery. They love serving in the nursery. They get all kinds of joy out of that. I don't. It's a point of stress for me. And I think there would be people who look at what I do on a Sunday morning and just get
back there. That would stress a lot.
Too many knobs. The lights are too bright. There's all kinds of who's going to speak in public. That's a frightening thing. But God gifts us differently so that we can all work in harmony with one another to move the mission forward. We're all, I think, and to some degree, we are God's gift to the church because He's wired us a certain way. He's gifted us a certain way. He's given us a whole string of life experiences so that it can aid in His mission.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think one of the things you talked about was, trying different things. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where we just jump in, just try something, and you will figure out fairly quickly if you like it or mm-hmm. not. So for me, interestingly enough, one of the things that I did, an area I did serve in at Pierpoint after we'd been attending for a little while, was with the student ministry. Now, student ministry at that time was like 3 students. Okay.
Okay.
But Jessica and I were some of the youngest people. We had a good reputation, good track record. We were spiritually mature enough, while being some of the youngest ones, mm-hmm. to be a good fit for that area. And we did it out of service, out of help, because there's a part of you want to be a help to your church, period. So we did it, and through that experience, we discovered that we were not necessarily really gifted in that area, nor was it the most fulfilling. Mm-hmm. Shortly after, when we moved here to Hope Church, we were looking for a way to serve, and there was a need mm-hmm. in the student ministry. So we served for about a year in the Hope student ministry here, and got to help out a lot. But again, through those experiences, we discovered that God had not called us long-term to student ministry. I'm so grateful for our student pastor, Todd, who is called long-term. Todd's been doing student ministry for, forever, over 20 years. Mm-hmm. But that's right where God has called him, and he does a great job at it. He connects with the students, but I wouldn't have ever known unless I had done that. So one of the things we say here at Hope is we want people to serve where they're needed and where they're gifted. And sometimes you don't always know where you're gifted, or sometimes maybe there's not exactly a need where the gifting is, but there's plenty of other ways to get involved and to try out. But it's most often through the serving that you discover more of your gifting and what you actually want to do. But I got to tell the nursery story, and then you can tell yours, okay? So mine,
I don't know.
I have a younger brother who's about 3 years younger than me, and a sister who's about 3 years younger than him. So my sister's 6 years younger than me.
Okay.
But I didn't really grow up around babies. You know, once she's grown up, and we moved here to be a part of Hope. And at that time, we were doing a nursery rotation where all members served in the nursery, and I was terrified to show up for my first day to serve in the nursery. And I remember this like toddler looking at me and putting their hands up, and I just kind of patted them on the head, and then the person who was working in the nursery was like, "What's going on, Matt?" And I'm like, I didn't know how to pick up a kid. I'm like, because I wasn't around children, and we have much better training now than we did back then. But so she brought one of her own kids over who was around that same age, and she's like, "Here's how you pick up a kid." And of course, now, I mean, I pick my own kids up all the time. That doesn't scare me or intimidate me, but I'm like, I don't even know how to pick up the kid. So I just tapped him on the head, and
good job, kid.
Yeah,
way to be a kid.
There, look.
Nice. That's good. See, my thing is I'm introverted, and I'm nervous about accidentally appearing. Like, I don't know how guests are going to, like, we have all these glass windows at the nursery. Are they going to be able to peer in? And I'm accidentally going to do something inappropriate. I wasn't intending to. I'm not trying to, but something. So my story is there was a kid, I think it was I'd never seen the child before. Not that I'm that observant of children, so who knows. And it's in the older kids. So these are kids who are on the verge of potty training, but they don't need holding and they don't need a whole lot of care. They just need to make sure that, they're sharing and they're playing and that kind of thing. And this kid decides that I'm their best friend. And so they're just following me like a duck all over the place. And I think we may have read some stories. I don't know. And at some point, same kind of thing. The kid looks at me, hands up or something, and says they need to go to the bathroom. I said, "Oh, you need to go to the bathroom? Great." And so I'm looking for a nursery worker to take care of that, because we have people that are trained. They change the diapers. They take the kid to the potty. I'm just volunteering. Have no responsibility.
Just play and read stories.
And I look back down, and the child has taken down their pants. No. I have not tried to pick up the child. I did not ask the child to take off their pants. Nothing like that. And like, someone help, please, because it was hard. It was didn't like it.
But there are people
who love that.
Who love serving in the nursery.
Yes. And we love them.
Yes. So whereas now we have different roles. So even if we're not doing that type of nursery rotation anymore, but even if we were, we've discovered through process of elimination that is not a good spot for me. No. Called us.
Not at all.
But the funny thing with that, though, as you mentioned earlier, I've never had a problem being on the stage in front of people. You've been involved in theater and all kinds of things. I'm assuming the same thing was probably for you, but other people were terrified to stand up on a stage in front of people. I mean, that's just, again, we all have different giftings, different abilities, and God wants us to use them to build up His church.
And I think an interesting thing that has come up recently is, what do we do with COVID? To some degree, a lot of the serving infrastructure evaporated when we all went into lockdown, and it's been a matter of, well, how do we rebuild? Some of the teams that we used to have regularly are gone. There was a lady who managed all of the program stuffing, and we had a group of ladies who would come up to the building every week and stuff programs. Well, that doesn't exist anymore. So how do I still serve if my team went away, or because of my age or my occupation or my other concerns, I'm not coming to the building? How does that work? And, this is still a thing in the Bible we still need to serve. And just because COVID happened, it didn't catch God off guard and it didn't surprise him. We still need to do it. And so I've been really encouraged by, there's 2 people I'm thinking of, but there's probably more who have called in, said, this is my situation. I'm not coming in on Sundays because I'm taking care of an elderly parent or because of job stuff. I'm around COVID people, so it doesn't make sense for me to come in, but I still want to serve. So how can I serve? And in both cases, it's, as we're exploring, like, what could you do? What's still needed? I think they're serving in areas that they weren't serving in before, but they are still able to add help to what's going on in a meaningful way. And that's really encouraging. So, if you're watching or listening to this and you're like, serving looks very different for me. I mentioned it in the sermon, but still, be aggressive. This is something that's really valuable to you, not just valuable to the church. And it's not just a way for us to get free labor. That's not the point. The point is to serve alongside other people, to see how God has gifted you to contribute to his work in the world. So be aggressive about it. Call in, email in to the office and see, let's talk. Let's figure out, how can you still participate in the ministry even if you're not able to be here on a Sunday morning?
Yeah, and I think, one of the things, this is mind-blowing, and it applies to what we're talking about with this hard attitude of participating in the ministry. God doesn't need us at all.
Right.
Like, at all.
At all.
But
he did fine in those first 6 days.
That's right. But he does not need us, but he invites us to participate. He invites us to be involved in what he's doing. And that has to do with actual, like, using our hands and feet, participating in the ministry. Next week, we're going to talk about support the work financially. That's another way that God invites us to be a part of it. Here's the other thing. He's going to accomplish his will and his purpose and his mission, whether or not you and I participate.
Yep.
But when we do, we get to be a part of what the God of the universe is doing on this planet. We get to be a part of expanding the kingdom. We get to be a part of what he's doing, and we don't do it to get blessed, but he blesses us tangibly and intangibly as we participate in the ministry, as we support the work financially. I mean, that's just, he invites us into this opportunity. And when we take it, he does stuff in us. He's able to help other people through us. So we're having to get a lot more creative right now. Like, as a church staff, we're having to be more creative. Individuals who maybe you're listening to this at home and aren't coming, or if the team that you were serving on is no longer here, like the program stuffing team. We've just got to get more creative. But in the middle of the creativity is really where there's more breakthrough that takes place. So I know the perspective and the attitude that we've been trying to take as a staff is, let's not look at it so much as what can't we do, but what's possible. Like, what are new opportunities to participate in the ministry that we've never thought up before? We've never had to think up these before. And in fact, one of the things we were trying to brainstorming the other day, and especially for those that are not joining us in person, I mean, there's so much opportunity to pray right now. And sometimes prayer doesn't feel like we're doing very much, but we're doing a lot.
Doing a lot.
We have an online service that starts at 6 a.m. and then goes every 2 hours on Sunday. So 6, 8, 10, 12, so on and so on.
All the way to midnight.
Watch or come live at 10 a.m. And then you could pick one of those time blocks and just pray for 5 or 10 minutes at the start of a service time. Pray for whoever's watching that service, that God would be working in their life, that he would be drawing them to him. So, I mean, that's one thing. We could maybe pray or walk around your neighborhood. I know a lot of people who have turned this COVID time into like a fitness / prayer warrior time. Like one guy, a friend of mine who actually lives in another state, but I don't know how many, like, hundreds of miles he's logged since March, just prayer walking and prayer biking all over the place. And then there's prayer driving. You don't want to close your eyes if you're doing prayer driving, if you're the driver, but driving, we've got this great loop, 820. I mean, drive a lap or two around the loop. Pray for our city. Even in the middle of this, there are so many people moving in to Texas, moving into the Dallas-Fort Worth area because we still have a good booming economy. People and businesses are moving here, so there's a lot of people whose lives are disrupted in so many ways, and they're either looking for Jesus, looking for something, or they're looking for something and they don't know yet that it's Jesus.
Right.
So there's no shortage of opportunities to pray and get creative. So there's just a couple of things to think about if you feel like, man, I'm at home and there's nothing I can do.
Yeah.
Well, there's always something that you can do to support, to participate in the ministry.
So be encouraged. There's still stuff that you can do. We would love to team with you. We would also invite you back for church on Sunday. We're going to look at, as you mentioned, Matt, we're going to be looking at the hard attitude of supporting the work financially. So if money is a hot topic for you in regards to church, you're really going to want to attend one of our services to get a larger perspective of the blessing that comes, not just a financial blessing like you're saying, but there's a lot of intangibles about that God does in our lives when we give financially. So check that out. Until then, we will see you later.